All right, here we go. Hello, everybody. Very nice. How's everybody doing tonight? Lovely Tuesday evening. All right. Hello, hello. See if I recognize any names. Not yet. Not yet. When you're coming in, if you want to go ahead, let me know where you are, maybe what you do, something just kind of let me know how far apart are we when it comes to all of these people, right? I'm in Connecticut, so for me, 6 p.m. Nice New England day today. It was about 50 degrees. We just gotten over really quite a large cold front. But it's back to more fallish weather, more seasonal. I'm going to be starting right around 6 o'clock. So we just wanted to open it up early so people could get in, get their things set, make sure that you can hear me, need headphones or anything like that. Just making sure everybody's good. Making sure I'm ready to go too. I have a feeling if I was sitting here saying all these things and no one could hear me, someone might say something. All right. Hello, hello. We do have the chat and I can't say anything to everybody, but we have chat and the Q&A are open. So if you have something, you can feel free to go ahead, say it. We'll see if I can catch it, especially now before I get into it. Yeah. Thank you everybody for coming. Give it a couple more minutes before we get started. Hello from Massachusetts. Pittsburgh. I love Pittsburgh. My sister did a show in Pittsburgh. It was lovely. Did not know that it was such a nice city. It was so walkable. I loved it. New York, absolutely. Go to New York all the time. That is where my sister lives. Georgia, Houston, very nice warm places. Be very jealous of you in the next couple of weeks. Absolutely. Knoxville, Tennessee. Ooh. Another Georgia, Arizona. Oh man, another warm place. Fair bit of Georgia. Nice. Sue from Ohio. Hello. Cincinnati. The Cincinnati Reds was the second baseball stadium that I went to, weirdly enough, even though I'm in Connecticut and right next to the Red Sox and the Yankees, like equidistant. Love Lowell. I have some friends that live right outside Lowell. Yes, Adrian, I do. I see your hand. Low. Give it a couple more minutes. Make sure, everybody has a chance to get here. They did. Honestly, sorry to the Houston person in the chat. Any year the Astros don't win feels like a good year to me at this point. Lots of Georgia. Awesome. That's great. All right, 6 o'clock here. Give it another minute or two to let people, kind of finish funneling in. And then we'll go ahead and we'll get ourselves started because I want to make sure that we get through everything. As I promised in the title of this, we're going to try to get through Science of Reading in 30 minutes or less. It's a lot of topic for 30 minutes, but I'm going to do my best. This is kind of going to be a speed run, if you could. Yeah, you could definitely make that comment. You could also throw it back to the Patriots too. I know, crossing different sports, but I suppose, you know. Another Connecticut. Great. I'm down at the mouth of the river, down in the old Saybrook area. All right. Great, great, great. So just going to do a little bit of housekeeping here before I get into the actual topic at hand, science of reading. Couple of things. First off, this webinar is going to be recorded. We want to make sure that everybody has a chance to see this, and not everybody is able to make it. So for the people that signed up and weren't able to make it, we want to make sure they have an opportunity. You'll also be getting an email after this with the recording and our website, any information or any resources that I talk about or share during this presentation. So all of those things will be sent out, whether you attended or not. Or if you find this really interesting and you have colleagues or anything like that may have found this useful, you'll be able to forward the recording and stuff like that to anybody else that you feel. I am joined by one of my colleagues who will be here kind of in the background monitoring the chat and the questions. So Gabby is here, but she will mostly be making sure that if you have any questions, they either get recorded and I will make sure that I get around to them, hopefully during this session, but if not, I can answer them and shoot back that information to you. Otherwise, Gabby will be doing her best to answer any questions as well. We're going to work together to make sure that everybody's voice is heard. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and get us started. We're at 6:03. Had a good amount of people funneling in. Here at Capstone, we like to start every single presentation that we have by kind of going over our purpose and our core values. So our purpose here at Capstone is that we help kids succeed by making learning fun. And that is honestly something that in my 2+ years here at Capstone, really everybody here holds that value really near and dear to their heart. It really is embodied in the work every day. Our core values: we let curiosity lead the way. We own it. We are an inclusive and welcoming team. We turn problems into opportunities, and our hearts and minds are committed to our purpose, which right now I would say everybody that's here, all 71 of you, I would say are really displaying that core value that we hold so important here at Capstone, because you're here after a full day of work, and I can't think of anything else other than you must be committed to helping our kiddos. I'm going to start off just a little bit about myself. I do work here at Capstone, but before I joined Capstone, I was a teacher. I taught for 10 years in Connecticut in a small town. I taught kindergarten, 3rd grade, 4th grade. I spent time as a math and ELA Tier 3 interventionist. I spent time as a data coach, as an instructional coach. Born and raised in Connecticut, went to UConn, got my master's in curriculum and instruction, went to Sacred Heart, got my educational leadership. As you can see, I am also a new dad. I always joked that I won't have kids until I don't work with them anymore. And I guess it wasn't really a joke, because now I don't work with kids, and I have this super smiley, beautiful, amazing daughter who is 6 months old now. Obviously, it's the best thing that's ever happened to me, but yeah, really, really pumped about that. I joined Capstone about 2.5 years ago, and since then, I've been part of the content team, I've been part of the marketing team, and really, I'm just here to use my teacher knowledge to help get as much information as possible to everybody that can use it. So let's get into it. Science reading, 30 minutes or less. Quick little agenda. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to define what the science of reading is and what it isn't. We're going to go over really briefly, why are we hearing about it so much now? I don't know about you, but it seems like everywhere I look in every ed channel, it's about science of reading. Even in places where it's not an ed channel, like Spotify, you get bombarded with podcasts that are science of reading. It is everywhere. So let's look about why are we hearing about it so much now? Why is it important? I mean, I think this one's pretty self-explanatory, but why is this trend so different? Why does it seem like there's this huge sense of urgency? And why does it have this huge state and even federal and national, backing behind it? And then lastly, we're going to look at how authentic texts, vocabulary, and background knowledge, how all of those things still work into and are just as important as ever, especially in the light of science of reading. And we're going to look at how you, as librarians, can support that and look at what sorts of resources you already have that can help out. So, starting off with it, what is the science of reading? Well, the science of reading is a body of research. That's all it is. If you were to boil it down into its most fundamental form, the science of reading is simply a body of research from decades worth of data from a variety of different fields. That's where it starts to be different and very new compared to other things. It combines fields like cognitive psychology, developmental psychology, neuroscience, educators, and it's all of these people working together after several decades to just figure out, how do individuals acquire written language? How do we acquire those reading and writing skills? And what are the best practices for that instruction? It is old. I know it seems new because we just have been hearing so much about it recently, but this research has been conducted over 5 decades. That's a really long time, especially if you think about how cyclical our education, how cyclical that pedagogy pendulum tends to be. The fact that this research has been going on for 5 decades is an enormous amount of time. What it is it's a focus on sequential and explicit instruction. It's a return to the idea that you need to teach skills individually and explicitly. You need to go back to the we do, or I do, we do, you do, provide models, give kids opportunities to practice and develop skills, and then move on. Some of the key skills that it's really focusing on would be phonological and phonemic awareness. Those are those listening skills that happen before the big scary word of phonics. Phonological awareness is your ability to hear and differentiate between sounds. That's the kind of thing where you ask a kid, what sound do you hear at the beginning of the word cat? Or you might ask them, if I say the sounds k, a, t, what word do those sounds make? There's nothing having to do with letters. You might give them pictures at some point to confirm it, but it's just sounds. Phonemic awareness is that next evolution of kind of hearing, and that's where you are asking them to manipulate and look at patterns of sounds. So instead of just asking what sound is at the beginning of the word cat, you might ask them, okay, if you get rid of the k sound and change it with a b sound, what word does that make now? So kids have to go through in their brain and manipulate, drop the C sound out, put the B in, and realize, oh, at bat, it says bat. Once kids really have those awesome listening skills, they're able to differentiate between sounds. That's when we get into phonics. That's teaching letter sound correspondence, a, apple, ah. We'll get into that. Those are the skills that you need in order to accurately decode content and information in books. It's teaching vocabulary and content area knowledge explicitly. That is something that we're going to focus on tonight. Expanding vocabulary and content knowledge. It is ridiculously important when it comes to language comprehension. Those are the two all-stars of reading and listening comprehension, right? And speaking of comprehension strategies, those are really difficult, but those are also the things that we need to be teaching explicitly, giving kids opportunities to make and confirm predictions, to identify main characters, to identify main idea in detail, to make inferences, the ultimate skill that really we're never done developing that skill. And also fluency, which is kind of the ultimate evolution of combining kind of everything together. Fluency is when kids move from automaticity, or picking words off of a page like a robot, and reading with expression and speed and accuracy. It's when you combine the ability to decode easily and effortlessly, but also understanding what you're reading, so you know what the character should be sounding like, to know if it should be ending on a happy note or a sad note, or what kind of tone you should be having, or the pace that you're reading in. Now, we just kind of quickly went over what it is. But I always think it helps to figure out what isn't it? What are some of these misconceptions? The science of reading, not a curriculum. I'm sure there are some companies that are going to want to tell you they have a science of reading curriculum, but it's not a curriculum. It's not a set of standards. It's not a program. In fact, you can't purchase it. It's not for sale. It's a body of research. It's not temporary. I feel very confident in saying that, even in a world where, I talked about that pedagogy pendulum and everything is cyclical and it always comes back, right? This I really don't think is temporary. I don't know if I've ever really seen individual states at this point, over 30 states that have written legislation that your reading instruction must include scientifically research-based instructional materials, which is really just a direct call out to the science of reading. It's not exclusive to early literacy. We never stopped teaching reading. I'm pretty sure there's English in middle school and in high school. I know I only taught middle school, or taught elementary school, but I went to middle and high school. Literacy doesn't stop in elementary school, and the science of reading is not just something for elementary school teachers. It is not a complete rejection of context and whole language. It embraces those ideas. There does still need to be some implicit learning. You do need to learn by trial and error. You do need to learn by exposure. It's just saying that there are other skills that need to happen as well. It's not going to be quick. This is not like oh, hey, we solved it. We had 50 years of research. Someone just figured it out yesterday. Now we all know exactly what we need to do and we're done. This is not going to be quick. It's going to continue to evolve. And in fact, the research that we have is going to continue to evolve as we get information while people are using the ideas that we've learned from it. And lastly, we're going to still need that teacher's expert judgment. It's not a complete rejection of the teacher as an expert. We're not going to be able to just say these things with complete fidelity and all of your problems are solved. I love this visual. If you've ever Googled science of reading, you probably get this visual in your image results or as one of the first links. While Scarborough's reading rope is not the science of reading, it has kind of become a little synonymous with it. I really love it because it does a great job of kind of telling the visual story that this body of research tells us about. It shows us that great reading instruction requires a lot of components. It shows us that the ultimate goal in reading instruction is to create skilled readers. It shows us that every skill needs to start off in isolation. If you look at those threads, they're by themselves. And that as students gain proficiency, you can start to weave together different types of skills, whether it's weaving together vocabulary and background knowledge, or it's starting to cross the line and weave together decoding and language structures. It does a great job of showing us that, yes, it needs to start off as explicit and sequential, but the idea is to eventually allow them to seamlessly work together. So, why are we hearing about the science of reading now? It's everywhere. Like I said, 30 states. It's 32 states in the District of Columbia since the last time I looked, which was a couple of weeks ago, have passed laws that require schools to implement strategies related to evidence-based reading instruction. That's science of reading. It's evidence-based. It is peer-reviewed. Some of the older programs that people were using, or some of the most popular things that people were using, they didn't really have any scientific evidence to show that the skills and the strategies that they were using were effective. That doesn't mean they were ineffective. It just means that we didn't have any research to really prove that they were universally effective. And lastly, I mean, the elephant in the room, COVID happened, right? I mean, we can't get around that. It was miserable. We had distance learning. We had hybrid learning. We went back to distance learning and more hybrid and then some in person and just back and forth all over the place. And let's be real, the people that were least equipped, the population that was least equipped to handle distance learning, I don't know about you, but it felt like to me, kindergarten, first grade, 5-year-olds aren't equipped to sit in front of a screen to see their teacher in front of them and acquire something as complex as written language by themselves. That's ridiculous. So yes, of course, we have a steep decline in literacy scores following the pandemic. Of course. And when we have that steep decline, we're going to look for solutions, right? So, as librarians, why is it so important? Well, this is a huge fundamental shift in rigor and an efficacy of instruction. There is this giant unifying body of research that tells us, for the most part, we know what makes good reading instruction, and it's multifaceted. For a lot of teachers, this is totally new. Not every teacher taught explicit phonics instruction, sequential phonics instruction. Not every teacher set time aside to explicitly teach background knowledge and vocabulary separately, right? These are totally new things, and teachers are drowning. Classroom teachers are struggling. We know that. And when it comes to the library and librarians, one universal truth, there's maybe two or three when it comes to reading instruction, but being surrounded by books is like the best way to foster a love of reading, right? And that's something that might be getting lost as we shift into this really intense, rigorous, sequential instruction. Because what we really want to do, like if we look at this, to me, this is kind of the ideal model of building a bridge to real literature, to real reading. And it's the idea of kids are going to receive this instruction, they're going to practice independently, right? They're going to apply those skills. And then ultimately, our goal is to really help them foster a love of reading. And with this huge focus on direct instruction, on phonics, and on catching up, whatever, I don't know who we're catching up to, but whatever, we need to catch up. We need librarians to help. We need you to be the driving force to make sure that reading is still fun, right? Because if kids just view reading as a task that they need to do, like memorizing multiplication facts, they're not going to want to do it on their own. And we know that kids need to immerse themselves in reading, immerse themselves in books and in literature, or they're not going to be able to learn all of these skills that are required. That being said, your only job as a librarian is not just fostering a love of reading. It's just kind of the best part of what, you can really do to help out right now. Something else that you can really do is help with background knowledge and vocabulary. Going back to Scarborough's reading rope, right? I'm sure some of you are thinking phonics is everywhere. I still think, science of reading is phonics. That's what really this big change is. And I'm here because I want to know, like, how can I help support systemic phonics instruction, right? Well, we have all of these word recognition skills, and I have an example here of the type of book that you would use to support systemic phonics instruction. It's a decodable, right? That's what they look like. A big hit. Nat gets a bat. Decodables target one, maybe two phonics skills and give kids as much practice as they can on those isolated skills. There's not much context. There's not much story. There's really nothing there except practice on those skills. It's kind of like multiplication cards, but in book form. And I don't really want you to let these intrusive thoughts win. I don't want us to think that science of reading is just phonics instruction, right? Or that maybe as a media literacy or a librarian, you don't know how to teach phonics, although I'm sure many of you do. A more realistic statement that would scare me is you can't plan for that many grades of explicit reading instruction. I mean, you're meeting with all the grades. Classroom teachers just have one, so there's no way. Or like even you don't have resources or books that can help support phonics instruction. The good news is background knowledge and vocabulary and the texts that you already have in your library, those actually help make phonics instruction more effective. The way I like to think about it is if our brain was like this perfect thing and we could dedicate it to just one or two tasks at a time, if we think of our brain power as zero sum, right? You can kind of figure out or see this relationship of how background knowledge and vocabulary go hand in hand with improving phonics instruction, right? So in my examples here, if a student is given a text that they have absolutely zero background knowledge on, say me, I don't know anything about riding horses or skiing, even though I'm from Connecticut, I guess I should ski. But if you gave me a book about skiing, I don't know anything about it. I'm going to be spending the majority of my brain power figuring out what does all of this mean? I've never read about this before. I don't know anything about skiing. And if I'm spending 80% of my brain power figuring out what the heck am I reading, then I only have 20% of my brain left to figure out what does this word say? Those are the phonics skills, right? And as students gain background knowledge, they have to spend less of their brain power figuring out what does the text mean. Maybe I read a second book about skiing and now only 60% of my brain is figuring out, okay, well, what is this skiing term? I don't know. Now I have 40% of my brain available to apply those phonics skills that my teacher taught me. And ultimately, if you gave me a book about something that I genuinely know a fair bit about, right? Maybe you give me a book about baseball. I'm going to spend almost my entire section of brain. I'm going to spend all of my brain power being able to figure out what are these words, right? What do they say? I get to use almost my entire brain on those phonics and decoding skills, right? So if a kid doesn't have background knowledge and vocabulary, they don't have the ability to make sense of what they're reading or read a word and know it's a word, right? A kid might decode a word perfectly. And if they don't know anything about that topic, if they've never heard of that word before, they have no way to confirm if they did it correctly. Also, explicit phonics instruction does a really great job of improving automaticity. Automaticity is just the idea of how fast can you pick words off a page, right? I'm sure all of you have experienced a kid that reads so fast, like a robot, 230 words correct per minute, absolutely no problem, zooms through it. But that's not really skilled reading. Skilled reading is more than just picking words off a page. I mentioned fluency before. That's really what we're trying to get to. And when it comes to building fluency, the library is perfect for helping kids improve fluency because like I talked about before, there's only a few universal truths when it comes to reading instruction. Well, one of them is hearing fluent readers improves fluency. Read alouds are so important. And with all of these basal reading programs that are getting shoved down people's throats, all of this explicit phonics instruction that teachers are making up for right now, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a lack of read alouds going on. And they're hugely important. That's where you get to hear good reading modeled for you. You also just need a mountain of books, right? One of the other universally agreed upon truths is to improve at reading, you need to practice. And the best way to practice is to have a lot of opportunities. And let me tell you, libraries, I don't know about y'all, but libraries tend to have more books than my classroom did. I had a small class library. I loved it. I had nothing on our real library. It wasn't even close. So those are two amazing ways that you can help build fluency, and just having kids work on anything else on background knowledge and vocabulary can help with all of that explicit phonics instruction. So back to the reading rope to tie it together, there are absolutely ways that you can help with those word recognition skills. I don't think that's the priority for librarians, right? Because the science of reading, yes, the consensus is that it's just an increase in phonics instruction, but that's not true. It's just the idea that everything needs to be taught sequentially and explicitly and allow kids to master it and learn new things in isolation before you have them apply it across all different bubbles, right? And because the science of reading is telling us that we need to do all of those components explicitly, we know that students need to develop a ridiculously rich and deep set of background knowledge and diverse vocabulary. And they need to be exposed to natural, authentic texts, books that were written to be read, not books that were written to teach, these texts that we encounter in real life, right? And we need to make sure that kids have the opportunity to engage with all genres and styles of print, not just these 32-page leveled readers that have a perfect spiral up from kindergarten to fifth grade, right? We don't want kids to just be like, oh, they went from the orange book to the blue book. I don't know if that's really skilled reading. So background knowledge, so important, and perfect opportunity for you to kind of reach across the aisle and work with your teachers and collaborate with them, because we know that background knowledge is how students make connections. It's how they contextualize facts for nonfiction. It's how they understand context and story events in fiction. Background knowledge is just as important for fiction as it is for nonfiction. and ways that you can help. Students need you for background knowledge because authentic texts are so important. An authentic text is anything that was made to entertain, inform, persuade. They're the things that you stock on your shelves, real books, trade books, right? Because read alouds from leveled text alone and students practicing their leveled texts is not sufficient because the text is just not adequately complex. They need that variety of genres and formats and themes. They need to be immersed in this authentic literature because if they're just reading those books that are written for instruction, they're going to struggle to apply those skills when they're given something that doesn't follow the exact same formula. Those didactic texts that we find in our reading programs are incredible and they are so necessary, right? But they are also a little bit patterned. We know that in nonfiction, the main idea is generally in the first paragraph or the first sentence. We know that there's going to be a variety of supporting evidence afterwards. When you're reading a fiction book and you know that the comprehension skill is going to be making and confirming predictions, there's almost always a perfect cliffhanger for students to stop and consider that skill. But that's not how real books work. Real books don't go away and tell you exactly what the author's point of view was immediately. They don't tell you what the point of the article is. They don't have everything in that perfect order. So making sure that we give kids the opportunity to apply those skills in real texts is so important. Additionally, you can help with background knowledge just by pre-teaching some content area stuff. The power of a real person read aloud is huge, right? Reading, if you have a teacher that's doing a science unit on frogs, get out some books on frogs, right? If you're working with your teachers and constantly asking them questions about what content are you going over, or what skill are you working on, or what are you doing in science and social studies, you can pull resources for them. If you work with them and figure out how you can pre-teach concepts or content to activate some of that background knowledge, that is humongous because then if a kid has that knowledge before they go into the lesson, they're getting so much more out of it. If they don't have that knowledge kind of activated before they go in, they're behind the eight ball before it even starts. Vocabulary is another hugely important area and a great way that you can help through the library. We know that vocabulary is how students, that's where they develop their expressive and receptive speech, right? That's how they become better writers. That's how they become better speakers. It helps them comprehend and understand difficult texts. And it allows them to dive into unknown topics. If you don't have a diverse set of vocabulary, every time you jump into something that you've never experienced before, you're going to struggle to make meaning out of it, right? So how can you help with vocabulary? Again, collaborate with your classroom educators. Ask them, what is the vocabulary? Like, what words are you working on? If you can work those into either resources or books or an activity that you're doing in the library, that is huge. Again, activating that background knowledge allows the students to access that instruction as it's happening rather than playing catch up. Find resources where students can see those vocabulary words in action. So many times students are introduced to new vocabulary words by being given a vocabulary card that has a picture of a thing, it has a word, and it has the definition on the back. They need to see these words being used. They need to see how it sounds, right? Not every kid has a perfect working understanding of the English language, of the complex syntax and semantics. Students aren't going to magically know if a word is a noun or a verb or an adjective based on the vocabulary word and the definition. They need to see it. They need to experience it. You could build a word wall. Again, work with your teacher friends. Build that word wall. It's a really excellent way to do things. Have students find their vocabulary words in the books that you have and put them up on the word wall. You can utilize graphic organizers. I guarantee there's no shortage of them. And really just give students opportunities to experience these words in the text and to write using these words. So back to the reading rope. We know that there's a lot of things that need to happen for really good reading instruction to occur. We know that there's a lot of language comprehension things that are going on, and there are a lot of word recognition skills that need to happen. We need diverse background knowledge of vocabulary, but they also need to understand syntax and semantics, concepts of print, holding a book, top to bottom, left to right. These are all things that they absolutely need to make sure that we're not missing out on. And for every minute that they spend on explicit instruction, that's a minute that kids aren't going to be spending just picking up a book because they feel like it, right? And the idea is that every single one of these strands is just as important as the next. They all build on each other and intertwine with each other. And when we are able to easily recall those phonics rules to decode things naturally, and when we're able to pull on our background knowledge of vocabulary, right, that's when you get to kind of take this journey and start to combine all of these skills together to end up at skilled reading. So a quick summary of just like the things that I listed as to what you can do with your teachers, and really some solid, just easy bullets on how you can help. Collaborating with your teachers. Ask questions about what skills, content knowledge, genres, and themes they're covering. If they're doing a unit on folktales, pull out your folktales. Figure out what they're doing in science. Find those books, right? Find those parallel resources so you can help pre-teach and reinforce what they're doing in the classroom. Anytime you can help a kid activate that background knowledge, it's going to help them read the words easier because they've heard them before and they know what they're supposed to sound like. It's so frustrating for a kid to apply those phonics skills flawlessly, come up with a word and be like, I've never heard of that. I must have read it wrong. I've seen it happen. And those are those points of frustration that we want to avoid. Support vocabulary by providing students opportunities to build word walls and see them in different contexts. Again, authentic literature is so important, and seeing these vocabulary words where they actually belong is the best way to make those connections and understand them. And lastly, I mean, if you really want to go the extra mile, work with your teacher, see if there's a small group activity that's falling off of their menu or their station that makes sense for you to do. Maybe there's an easy little response to literature that they can do. Maybe there's a graphic organizer that they're working on, or a story, or some creative writing. Most of the time, those things are already planned in advance. They just run out of time. I see, I would be ecstatic if my librarian did that for me. And then honestly, the awesome part, the part that really needs to happen and that I'm scared might not, but foster a love of literature. Surround students with choice. Don't gate them off because, oh, that book's too hard for you. If they're interested in the book, if they're interested in the topic, let them enjoy it. They need to be surrounded by books that they're excited to read. No one's going to do something voluntarily that they hate, especially not students who are not implicitly motivated yet, right? We as adults know we have to pay bills because there's consequences, but students are really not at that point. They haven't really developed the implicit versus explicit motivation. So we need to make sure that they're getting to do things that they enjoy. And the more they enjoy it, the more they're going to be willing to engage, right? Give them those opportunities to access texts with lots of appropriate scaffolds, right? Be that read aloud person for them. Find that text and give them the opportunity to listen to a fluent reader. I cannot tell you how important it is, right? And I'm not going to lie, classroom teachers, they're probably jealous because in my 10 years of teaching, I would say my favorite activity that I did, period, case closed, was teaching third grade. After recess every day, you get that nice little cascade, and it just works out perfectly where you have two kids every 35 seconds to a minute and a half have to use the bathroom, or they need to refill their water bottle. And you're not getting anything meaningful done for those 15 to 20 minutes after recess anyway. So I'm going to read Maniac McGee. It was my favorite part of the year, every year, Maniac McGee and Hugo. And like, they don't have time. You get to do it. Give them the opportunity to do those things and enjoy that passionate read aloud. So I definitely will answer some questions. I did talk about some appropriate scaffolds, and some examples of appropriate scaffolds would be Like for Capstone, right? We have Pebble Go Next, and all of our print and our ebook content. Those are all authentic texts, right? Pebble Go and Pebble Go Next, those are, our awesome research databases filled with nonfiction, but it's all authentic nonfiction. It's a great way for students to dive in safely, build some background knowledge, experience that vocabulary and context, have a live glossary. They can click it, the word pops up, tells them the definition, go right back to the article, see it read for them. All of that is a great way. That's what I mean by scaffolds, giving kids opportunities to kind of step up that zone of proximal development, right? We want them to always have everything just at a fingertips reach, and they just need that tiny little boost because that's where the best learning happens. PebbleGo and Capstone Interactive, the digital platforms, which is our ebook reader, those also have some great scaffolds with like natural voice read aloud, right? Because we really want to make sure that kids are able to experience any text that they find enjoyable. And it's not always a text that they can access on their own. And that's frustrating. I know I was not the best reader in third grade, and all my friends were reading Harry Potter. When I was in third grade, that was the year that the Sorcerer's Stone came out. Maybe it was fourth grade. I think it was 1995. So yeah, that tracks. I'll date myself, 36. I wasn't a good enough reader, and all my friends read it. I would have needed something like this audiobook or this read aloud, right? We have playaways. This is kind of like a play on the playaway, but even better because it has the text in front of you and it tracks it for you. But those sorts of scaffolds, those are invaluable, and you can let kids kind of experience books that they might not even be ready to read yet. But we really want to foster that love. Lastly, and I'm going to get around to some of the things, I see some questions and comments. But if I don't get to your question or comment today, or if you just have any other follow-ups, or if you would like to talk to me, or if you would like any other information about the science of reading or Capstone products, please reach out to me. This is my passion. I love teaching. I love teachers. I love helping people. I love reading. There's a reason why I was an elementary school teacher and now I work for a children's publishing company. This is my passion. And anytime I get to work with people and help out, and I know that the work that I'm going to do is going to help kids, that's like the best feeling in the whole world. My email is right here. I also think it is in the webinar invites that came. It'll be sent in the follow-up email with the website that has this recording. Otherwise, if you want to learn more about Pebble Go or any of our print or ebooks, you can visit capstonepub.com or pebblego.com. So that would be Science of Reading in almost 30 minutes or less. I think I did it in like 34 if you count that I started like 4 minutes late. But I'm going to go ahead and get to questions. I think I saw some of them. Opportunity to listen to this again. Absolutely. It's going to be coming to you in a follow-up email. It'll have the link to the website. It'll have the recording for this. And on our website, we're also going to have a downloadable for the reading rope graphic that I put up. And that awesome bridge to literature graphic that I put up, which features at least my favorite book of the season, or at least my favorite chapter book of the season, which is Betty the Yeti. Absolutely my favorite book that happened. I think there's a couple of other questions, so I'm going to go ahead, pull that up. Here we go. I think Dawn had a question, so I'm just going to go ahead and answer that. Public librarian here. Appreciate the importance of background knowledge and vocabulary. In the public library world, we are consciously creating our storytime programs with early literacy and best practices in mind, including elements that help build background knowledge, vocabulary, and print awareness. This work begins long before they enter school. Do you have any specific suggestions or thoughts for those of us public librarians and how we can help support kids in schools? Absolutely. Like you said, it occurs way before students enter school. I think at the very beginning of my presentation, I talked about the importance of those listening skills. That is humongous. Like, I think teachers sometimes kind of jump the shark, go straight into phonics when students don't even have the ability to discern between individual sounds. working on that would be absolutely huge. Resources that you can have that you can share with teachers or that you can share with parents. Any books that have rhyming schemes or that have alliteration, those are incredible books because we're not expecting kids to read at that point. They're pre-literacy. So, it's totally fine if you give them a text that's a little bit more complex. That would be an amazing way to do that to help build background knowledge and vocabulary and print awareness. I mean, if you have a platform like a Pebble Go or CI, which is Capstone Interactive with ebooks, if you can get kids the ability to listen, if you can give them some listening comprehension opportunities with visuals to back it up, that's also huge. There are plenty of awesome YouTube channels if you want to do the work on your own to find some of those great science and social studies channels. That would be a great way to kind of build through that. Yeah, if I think of some others, I will reach out to you. That's an awesome question. It's so big. And I mean, like, I guess Maniac McGee is not like the most appropriate for third grade and complex. It was I guess it was more, maybe it was more of a fourth grade read aloud for me, but that was my favorite book when I was in school. I remember our librarian reading it to me, and I loved it. Like that moment where he untied the he untied that unbreakable knot. I don't know, that stuck with me forever, and I decided when I was a teacher that's what I wanted to read, I guess. All right, see if I have anything else going on. Great. Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for attending. Like I said, will I be presenting a Science of Reading Part 2? I mean, I think that there is so much information that we can be going over. Please keep your eyes peeled in your email. If we do another one, I mean, I'm planning on trying to do as much as I can to support. So it's definitely in the cards. You'll get the information. It'll be just like you got it this time. It'll be from me. I'll be emailing it to everybody. It'll have my name on it, and you'll know that we'll be doing that. I'd also love to get some people that honestly are smarter than me and more experienced. My goal is to get everybody as much information as humanly possible. Otherwise, thank you everybody so much for coming, and hopefully you can look out for the follow-up email. Feel free to rewatch this, share it with anyone you want. If you have any questions, tomorrow morning, you're having your morning coffee, driving into work, question pops in your head, email me. I will absolutely answer it. Have a great night. Thank you.